Warning! This video contains spoilers for all content in Wings of Fire Legends Dragonslayer, aside from the epilogue. There will also be spoilers for the plot of the first arc of the Wings of Fire series. Please don't watch this video if you haven't read these installments and don't want spoilers. Hi everyone! This is my chapter-by-chapter breakdown for the third and final part of Wings of Fire Legends Dragonslayer. Just so you know, this is not the last video in this series, as I will do a separate video called Part 4 that specifically highlights the prologue, epilogue, the book as a whole, and the possibility of a sequel. Part 3 is from chapters 23 to 38, or pages 303 to 488. Without further ado, let's get started. Chapter 23, Ren. This chapter opens with Ren walking across the desert all the way from Possibility to the edge of the Sand Kingdom, bordering the Ice Kingdom, in search of Sky. She had walked for days, following the Sandwing battalion from Possibility. Just when she neared the border, the Sandwings turned around, leaving Ren behind again. She saw Sky with them, which meant she had to walk all the way back to Possibility. She eavesdrops to learn that they stopped for a day before going back to the stronghold. She knew that she couldn't get there quickly enough, so she decides to enlist the help of a dragon. She stole a dagger and started to stalk some candidates. A few days later, she finds a suitable dragon. It is Deathbringer, right before the events of the Hidden Kingdom. She sees a Sandwing hand him a scroll with his new assignment on it. Deathbringer is reluctant, but accepts the assignment. After some dialogue, Ren walks over, telling him that she needs his help. Deathbringer is in shock in seeing a scavenger speak dragon, telling Ren that scavengers, in his experience, generally went squeak squeak and then fell over and died. She tells him to fly to the stronghold and ask his name. She doesn't know just every word in dragon, so she can't initially understand his name. She guesses some names like Provider of Corpses, Plague Carrier, and finally learns his real name, Murder Basket. Have you ever heard the tragedy of Murder Basket? No? Well, now you have. Anyway, Ren convinces Murder Basket to help her because he doesn't even want to do his assignment. Ren may have saved the lives of the dragonettes here because she basically got Deathbringer to do something else besides go and track down the dragonettes. And by motivating Deathbringer to help her, I mean poking him in the wing membrane hard enough to draw blood with her dagger. Deathbringer makes a funny comment, saying that he never understood how scavengers managed to kill Queen Oasis, but now he saw that scavengers were ferocious, mean little monsters, and it all made sense. Soon they were in the sky, flying toward the stronghold. Chapter 24, Ivy. This chapter starts with Ivy, Violet, and Daffodil trying to come up with a plan to get the treasure back to the Sandwings while sky-gazing. As you can imagine, it is quite difficult to do this if you don't speak dragon. Suddenly, 3 Skywings emerge from the clouds, chasing Leaf. Leaf tries desperately to escape the dragons, but he wasn't exactly trained in the art. At the last second, Ivy decides to try and rescue him. Violet and Daffodil follow, and they manage to get Leaf into Valor. He introduces himself and asks where he can find the Dragonslayer. They ask why, and he tells them a very short version of his story. He's always wanted to kill a dragon, which is definitely the wrong thing to say in front of those people if you want a good impression. Chapter 25, Leaf. This chapter picks up right after the last, as Leaf is walking through the tunnels of Valor. He asks why nobody else was wearing green, just to make conversation, I guess. He learns that they're Wind Watchers, people who study dragons and watch for them, like their name. He is relieved to learn that they aren't at all like the Dragonmancers. They, in turn, ask why he wanted to kill a dragon so much. He tells them that dragons ate his younger sister, but it was kind of weird because he knew that the Dragonmancers sacrificed her, and he didn't know if he was even doing the right thing anymore. Soon, they reach the Dragonslayer's cave, who refuses to even listen to what Leaf is trying to say. Leaf begins to realize that the Dragonslayer is not at all who he's made out to be. Ivy asks Stone if Leaf can stay with him, and Stone accepted. The two talk about the incident of poor Queen Oasis, who was a great queen, at least until those evil scavenger dragon stabbers showed up. Leaf asks him what really happened that fateful night, but Stone doesn't tell him. Chapter 26 Ren. This chapter opens as Ren arrives at the Samling stronghold on Murder Basket. Murder Basket has to leave, and Ren thanks him and tells him not to kill his targets, possibly saving the Dragonettes of Destiny once again. Thankfully, Murder Basket drops off Ren inside the stronghold so she doesn't have to climb the walls, which we will soon learn are covered in small pieces of glass and spikes, making them impossible to climb. She discovers that Sky wasn't in the Weirdling Tower because there was only enough food for one dragon being brought in, which is Scarlet. Ren then decides to spy on the soldiers and sees the obelisk dedicated to Queen Oasis, whose bones now lie or belong to the sands of time. Did you know Byrne could be that poetic? She also hears Scarlet, also known as the other psychotic dragon. Soon, General Sandstorm arrives at the scene and yells for Prince Smolder. She listens to their rather uneventful conversation and learns that Sky was still alive, which was good. Ren follows Sandstorm into a room where Sky is chained up. Sky tries to talk Sandstorm out of giving him to Byrne, but it doesn't work. As soon as Sandstorm leaves, Ren goes to talk to Sky. She learns about Byrne's weirdling obsession, and Ren decides that the only way to free Sky is to kill Sandstorm. Chapter 27. This chapter starts with Ivy being woken up by Daffodil to a dramatically changed situation. The Dragonslayer had just arrested nearly all of the Wing Watchers on the charge of conspiracy against the Dragonslayer, including Violet. They decide that they have to go to Foxglove's cave to prevent the Dragonslayer's goons from finding the Dream Visitor. And then she realizes just how many goons he had. There were dozens of them. Ivy runs into her mom, who's also awake and frantically deciding what to do. She arrives at Foxglove's cave and manages to trick one of the goons into letting her check the cave again. She tells him to check Foxglove cave, and she will check her roommate's cave. Of course, the guard is suspicious, but Ivy actually knows this. The guard tells them to switch places, so Ivy gets to check Foxglove's cave, and that lets her get the Dream Visitor, which is a pretty smart plan. She reconvenes with Daffodil, and the two escape from Valor. This chapter begins during, or I'm going to assume right after, the prior chapter, as Leaf wakes up right before the Dragonslayer's goons arrive at his door to arrest him for conspiracy to murder the Dragonslayer. They knock, and Stone signals Leaf to hide in the kitchen cabinet while he deals with the goons outside. He tells them that he sent Leaf for water and gives them a made-up story that they believe, at least for now. So they let him back inside. Stone pulls aside a tapestry, revealing a secret tunnel that leads out of Valor. They climb in, and Stone hands him a spoon and tells him to dig upwards, and thus out of the hidden city. Leaf thought he would suffocate, and was beginning to run out of air until he reached the ground. They emerge just above the tree line, and Stone tells him that he started making the tunnel over a year ago when he first got back to Valor. And then Stone tells Leaf the whole truth, a truth that Stone didn't realize until years after the incident. The truth that Stone killed Oasis, the truth that they left Rose behind, the truth that the Dragonslayer was a fraud, the truth that killing poor Oasis was no noble act, but an act of greed, the truth that the infamous Dragonslayer was no better than those evil Dragonmancers. They meet up with Ivy and Daffodil, who tell them what has just happened. They go to the old village, and Leaf asks if the damage was done by the dragons, but then they realize that this was all Heath's doing. Ivy knows that he's only been told part of the Dragonslayer's story, and asks him to help them return the treasure to the dragons. Leaf tells him that it might actually work, considering his experiences in the Sky Kingdom with Clay and the other Dragonette. He also tells him that Stone was the real Dragonslayer, which made the story make way more sense. Also, in the Sky Kingdom, Leaf says that Tsunami was just blue, but in the Dragonette prophecy, she's supposed to be covered in blood when that happens, so there's a little inconsistency there. Suddenly, a dragon steps in front of them, but not just any dragon. It's Sunny, and this is taking place during the brightest night, which means that this happens in 5,011 years after the scorching, and is an amazing tie-in. And you can probably guess what happens next. Anyway, they see Sunny, and they're pretty much awestruck. Leaf tells Ivy that Sunny was in a cage in the Sky Kingdom, but we already knew that. Sunny lifts into the sky, searching the ruins for treasure but can't find any. This is where the chapter ends, and just so you know, they think that Sunny is a new dragon species. Stupid scavengers. Chapter 29. Ren. This chapter picks up right after chapter 26, with Ren deciding how to kill Sandstorm. Sky then tells Ren the tragedy of Queen Oasis, whose bones now belong to the sands of time. Sky asks if she could enlist another dragon like Murder Basket, but Ren is doubtful. Ren decides to poison Sandstorm, as that would be the stealthiest way to kill him. She goes into the kitchen in search of rat poison and runs into Rose, and this is her third or second appearance in the canonical timeline. The first being Dragonslayer's prologue, and the second, or maybe third, being the part of the brightest night where Smolder lets Sunny meet her. Ren asks who she was, and Rose introduces herself and tells Ren that she lived in the stronghold. Let's remember that Rose is around 36 right now, and has lived with Smolder for 2 decades. Rose then asks what she's doing, and she offers to help get more poison pellets after hearing what Ren is attempting to do. The two go off collecting poison pellets and ask each other some stuff and get to know each other pretty well, like if Ren was killing Sandstorm for treasure. Ren, of course, says no. Rose then recounts to Ren the tragedy of Queen Oasis, whose bones now belong to the sands of time, from her perspective. Rose then asks which one Sandstorm was. Ren says that she heard them say it. Rose obviously doesn't speak dragon and asks Ren to teach her. Ren plays dumb and runs off with the poison, but of course Rose doesn't believe her. Now back to the scene at hand. Ren goes to Sandstorm's quarters and waits in a cupboard for Sandstorm's drink, and it eventually arrives. It is the infamous stronghold cinnamon milk. Ren waits for the dragon who delivered it to leave, and then climbs up to the cup and drops in each one of the poison pellets, one by one. Thankfully, the pellets dissolve into the drink, and Ren waits for the dragon, Sandstorm, to arrive. Sandstorm soon stomps into the room, telling Sky that Burn would be back soon, and describing how he would be mounted on display. He drinks the drink, which makes him feel weird, but he doesn't die just yet, because he was summoned to defend the stronghold from the Outclaw invasion. The dragon who summons him, Camel, who is also the dragon assigned to watch over Sunny during the battle, is terrified and says that very angry and scary Sandwing suddenly attacked them. Sandstorm goes with it, getting sicker by the minute, but not dying. Sandstorm flies into the heat of battle. He starts strangling a dragon that was probably Ghibli, but we have no confirmation. Suddenly, Sandstorm clutches his stomach and dies, and Ghibli goes to fight some more dragons. This is where this very eventful chapter ends, with unscalable walls and an army between Ren and the key to Sky's chains. Very dramatic. Chapter 30. Ivy. This chapter starts with everyone hiding out in a temple a short way away from the old village. It was heavily damaged, but they were able to manage. The temple was very interesting because it was covered in depictions of dragons doing different activities. Soon, they see Forrest, a fellow wing watcher and Commander Brooks' son. He had brought news from Valor. Nearly all of the Wing Watchers, along with Commander Brooke, had been arrested for conspiracy against the Dragonslayer and working with the Invincible Lord's assassin, Leaf, to kill him. In truth, the Wing Watchers did have a conspiracy to have a vote to replace the Dragonslayer as ruler of Valor, but they weren't planning on killing him. The Dragonslayer, being a paranoid idiot, has decided to execute Leaf and most of the Wing Watchers as soon as the supposed traitors are captured. Forrest leaves, leaving the fugitives to plan their next move. Ivy starts to use the Dream Visitor to talk to Sunny. Unbeknownst to Ivy, the magic links their two minds in her sleep. Well, in Sunny's sleep. Ivy could see Sunny in the desert with Rose on her shoulder. Ivy pieces together that this Dream Visitor must be magic and runs to Stone with the news, ending this exciting chapter. Chapter 31 Leaf. This chapter starts with Ivy trying to convince everyone that Rose was alive, but they just wouldn't believe her. Stone goes back to Valor to steal some horses, just as he did with the old village 20 years prior. Leaf and Ivy go back to the ruins of the old village to see if Forrest has returned with more information. They are poking around the village when Sunny arrives right before them. Can you guess what happens next? I'll give you a clue. Sunny frantically sorts through the pile, but she already knows the answer. The Eye of Onyx isn't there. And yes, I know that I did not get that wording right. It's completely from memory. Back to what's happening. Sunny traps Ivy, between her claws, as Fluffy, Leaf, tries to fight back. Ivy gives Sunny the Dream Visitor to see if she was looking for the treasure, and we all know the rest of the story. But I'm going to tell you anyway. Sunny tries to communicate with Leaf to go get the treasure, so he does. Ivy tells Leaf the combination, and off he goes. Leaf enters Valor via Stone's escape tunnel. Leaf disguises himself and runs to Ivy's cave. He knocks at the door and runs out of view to check who answers. It's Lark, Ivy's mother. He knocks again and can hear the Dragonslayer yelling from the next room. Ivy's mother lies and tells Heath that nobody was there, but she lets Leaf in. Leaf finds the pedestal and does the combination. Lark is shocked at the amount of treasure, as Heath had never even let her see it in her entire life. Lark helps him carry out all the treasure, and he leaves for the old village, ending this amazing reference chapter for the brightest night. Chapter 32 Ivy. This chapter happens as the previous one takes place. It starts with Ivy trying to ask Sunny where Rose was, but they can't interpret each other's thoughts. Ivy asks if she could have Rose back and points to Sunny's shoulder, asking where the person was that was sitting over there. Sunny misunderstands and lifts Ivy to her shoulder, thinking that she wants a ride. This was not what Ivy wanted, and she's freaked out at first. However, she grows to love the experience, and she gets to see a large portion of Pyria from Sunny flying her around. When they get back, Leaf is already waiting for them with the treasure. Sunny sorts through it, but cannot find the Eye of Onyx, as the book goes, and is pretty angry. Sunny flies off with all the Sandling treasure towards the Kingdom of Sand. Sun arrives with the horses and his invisibility chain, and they all ride off to find Rose. Chapter 33 Ren. This chapter begins as Sandstorm's corpse is lying outside the stronghold and the key on it. All of the dragons were terrified, as Burn had just arrived, so no one had remembered Sky just yet. Ren tries out everything to get the chains off, but nothing works. Ren tries to climb the walls, but, as I said earlier, they were embedded with spikes and glass, which cut Ren. Rose finds her and bandages her injured hand. It is mentioned that the Sandwings flew off with Sunny, and that Rose kept her company for a night. Rose mentions that Smolder has copies of all the keys in the palace and that she can help with Ren's problem. Ren asks if Smolder was a reasonable dragon. We learn that Rose thought his name was Ember, and I'm really happy they brought that back into the canonical universe, because it's a pretty cool name. Rose also thought he just worked for Burn, and that Smolder had no royal status. Ren decides to let Rose help and teach her a little bit of dragon, ending this chapter. Chapter 34, Ivy. This chapter starts a few hours after the last, as everyone arrives at Burn's stronghold. Ivy uses the invisibility chain to scout ahead. She throws rocks at both guards, who are already angry at each other, and they throw rocks at each other after Ivy throws enough rocks because they can't see Ivy and assume that the other dragon did it. One of them goes back inside to get a different dragon to guard in her place, leaving the gate ajar, which the group can sneak through after they all put on the chain, which is large enough to encircle all of them. A sandling picks up Stone after finding him before they can put the chain on him, and takes him to Smolder, thinking she's Rose. He sees Rose with Smolder and drops Stone in utter and complete terror. They meet with Rose, and she tells them all about everything that had just happened. Rose mispronounces something in dragon, and Smolder just laughs and walks away. Ivy explains how they were there to rescue Rose, but she wasn't interested at all and just wanted to stay. She tells them she's not coming back. When they tell her that the dragon was looking for something specific, she says it must have been left in the 2 bags they left behind. Rose then unintentionally mentions Ren, who was there to save her dragon and actually spoke dragon and taught a little to Rose. Leaf decides that he has to go and find this Ren and hope it could have been his sister. Chapter 35, Leaf. This chapter picks up right after the last, as the group decides that the only way to catch up to Ren was to ride another dragon. Ren had left earlier that night, so they choose to ride a dragon they call Sweetface, whose name is actually Sirius, who sort of likes humans and has a pretty big wingspan. Leaf realizes that after finding Rose, Stone was completely changed. Not Heath. They wait on an open platform for Sweetface to get back from scouting. Sweetface gets back, allowing Leaf to climb onto her, while Rose signals for her to fly into Ren's direction. After flying for a bit, he spots another dragon with a dark shape on it. Sweetface sees it too, and starts flying in Ren's direction, but then she turns away toward the palace. Leaf yells for Ren, but falls off Sweetface and trying to steer her back, leaving us desperate for the next chapter. Chapter 36, Ren. This chapter, like the ones before it, picks up right after the last, when Sky hears someone call out Ren's name behind them. Ren and Sky, thinking it is Rose, dive to catch them, but as they get closer, they realize that it's not Rose, but a boy that was around Ren's age that she didn't recognize. I find it very interesting that Ren didn't even recognize Leaf, all the while Leaf had spent his whole life trying to avenge her. Just before he hits the ground, Sweetface catches Leaf, saving him. Sky flies Ren down to the dune where Leaf is, too. Leaf asks if it was really Ren, and tells her he was Leaf. Ren literally replies with a, "Well, that's surprising." Though this sounds pretty unsurprised, you can tell that she's happy Leaf came for her. Leaf tells her about everything, about Rowan and the Sky Palace and Valor and everything in between. When Leaf tells her how hard it was to stab a dragon, then she says she's done it a couple times. This is obviously a reference to Murder Basket. And then Leaf says, "By all 3 moons, of course you have. Have you managed to kill one too?" Now you may think that the sentence isn't that important, but it really is. As far as I know, it is the first recorded instance of a scavenger using the expression 3 moons, which was just a dragon thing until now. I wonder if Tui intentionally did this, wanting to make humans and dragons seem more similar, or if it was just a mistake. Anyway, Ren answers a yes, a reference to Sandstorm, and after Leaf finishes his story, Ren introduces him to Sky. After this, Ren tells Sky to tell Sweetface to fly Leaf to the stronghold and help him, Ivy, and Stone get out and escape. Leaf tells Ren to meet him at the ruins of the old village in a few days' time, even using its location in relation to Jade Mountain as a means of direction. Of course, they don't call it Jade Mountain, but rather the Twin-Peaked Mountain. I'm afraid this is the end of Ren's chapters in this book. Chapter 37, Ivy. This is Ivy's last chapter, and it starts a few days after the last, with Ivy meeting Ren. They ask for updates from Daffodil and learn that things were only getting worse back in Valor. They decide on a plan to make Sky act as an angry dragon that wants the treasure they stole back. They hike up to Valor at its biggest entrance and begin to tunnel into the city, Ren riding on Sky and translating his dragon to Ivy, who announces their messages to the people of Valor as they run in terror from Sky. She tells them all to get into the main hall, and most of them do because they're too scared of what will happen to them if they don't. One of the people announces that the Dragonslayer was coming and that he'd save them all from the dragon. However, this is just what they need for their plan to work. The Dragonslayer soon appears with his sword, shaking like a leaf. Sky roars twice, terrifying the Dragonslayer out of his mind. After Ivy announces that the dragon seeks the human who murdered his queen, and then Heath destroys everything Valor is built on, admitting that he was an impostor and that Stone killed poor Queen Oasis. This causes the false Dragonslayer's guard to turn against him, his goons surrendering and asking the dragon to take the Dragonslayer and leave everyone else. Then, Ivy demands that on behalf of Sky, they give the treasure back, free the Wing Watchers, and choose a new leader. Lark, Ivy's mother, goes to get the treasure, even though it isn't there anymore. Instead, she fills a sack with pots and pans and gives it to Sky. The Wing Watchers are freed, including Violet, Foxglove, and Commander Brooke. They choose Commander Brooke as their new leader. Next, they go to Talisman, ending the second to last chapter. Chapter 38, Leaf. Some books have disappointing final chapters. Dragonslayer does not. This chapter ends with Ren riding Sky into Talisman during the festivities of Dragonmancer Appreciation Day. The whole town stood frozen and petrified at the sight of the dragons, instead of running like they did in Valor. Ren walks over to confront the Dragonmancers, who are also terrified that she survived, not of the dragon. What Ren does next is admittedly pretty great. She announces to the whole town that the Dragonmancers used to be treasure smugglers, and there used to be 4. The other 3 conspired to sacrifice the others so they would get the 4th Dragonmancer's treasure, gain an army full of worshippers, the residents of Talisman, and be established as mystical. She also tells them about how once the Dragonmancers were too lazy to steal more for themselves, they would train apprentices to steal the treasure from the Skylings for them. Ren terrifies the Dragonmancers into giving her the keys to their meeting house in the prison, allowing her to free Rowan and Grove from the prison. Ren tosses the meeting house keys to Cranberry, who, in turn, brings out the Dragonmancers' books. Ren reads them out loud to everyone, which leaves them hating the Dragonmancers rather than worshipping them. Ren's parents emerge from the crowd but are rejected in disgust by Ren, Leaf, and Rowan, who turn their backs and leave. Rowan, Grove, and Cranberry set about to create a new human city that would care for those who lost their homes in Operation Vengeance for Queen Oasis, whose bones now belong to the sands of time. Meanwhile, the 3 protagonists decide to find Sunny, ending Wings of Fire Legends Dragonslayer. I'm afraid that finishes our Dragonslayer Part 3 chapter by chapter breakdown. If you want to hear my ranking for this book, then check out my latest Wings of Fire book ranking video. If you'd like to hear me talk about the prologue, epilogue, and possibility for a sequel, I'll see you in Part 4. The one thing I would have loved to see in this was the scene where they dug out the treasure from Oasis's mouth in The Brightest Night. Though the Easter egg type things were very overdone in this book, it was pretty cool to see all of our favorite scenes from the Dragonet Prophecy and The Brightest Night, except for the ones with Thorn and the end of the War of Sandwing's Succession. Thank you for watching! Please leave a like, comment your thoughts below, and subscribe to my channel for more Wings of Fire videos, and I'll see you in the next video.